The message from New Gansu reached Earth's Deep Space Monitoring Station at exactly 0300 hours local time. The duty officer, a tired woman named Lieutenant Chen, almost dismissed it as another piece of space static. Deep space was full of strange signals that meant nothing, but something about this transmission was different. It was encoded with human emergency protocols and carried the signature of a registered colony. Lieutenant Chen sat up straight in her chair and played the message again. "This is New Gansu Colony. We are under attack by unknown alien forces. Requesting immediate assistance, we cannot hold much longer." The woman's voice was calm and professional, but Lieutenant Chen could hear the fear beneath the words. She had never heard of New Gansu Colony, but that meant nothing. There were hundreds of human settlements scattered across the galaxy, many of them so remote that Earth rarely heard from them. What made her blood run cold were the words unknown alien forces. Within minutes, the message was racing through communication channels toward the highest levels of Earth's government. Military commanders were pulled from their beds. Politicians were summoned from their homes. Scientists were called away from their laboratories. By dawn, the most powerful people on Earth were gathered in the secure briefing room beneath the Terran Defense Command headquarters. The room was filled with worried faces and hushed conversations as the message played again and again. Fleet Admiral Taehyun Kang sat at the head of the long table, his weathered face showing no emotion as he listened to the transmission for the 5th time. At 63 years old, he had spent his entire adult life preparing for threats to human civilization. But he had always imagined those threats would come from other humans, not from alien species that no one knew existed. "What do we know about this colony?" he asked. General Morrison, head of Colonial Affairs, consulted his tablet. New Gansu Colony was established 58 years ago as a mining operation. Population approximately 15,000. It's located 47 light-years from Earth in the Ross sector. 47 light-years. Admiral Kang repeated slowly. "That's beyond the range of any of our current fleets." "That's correct, sir," said Dr. Sarah Kim, Earth's leading expert on faster-than-light travel. "Our longest military deployment was the Proxima expedition, and that was only 12 light-years. We've never attempted to send a fleet to Ross sector." Around the table, heads nodded grimly. The mathematics were simple and brutal. Even with the fastest ships Earth could build, it would take months to reach New Gansu. By then, the colony would be long dead. "There's another problem," General Morrison continued. "We have no idea what we're dealing with. The message mentions unknown alien forces, but we have no information about their capabilities, their numbers, or their intentions." "Their intentions seem clear enough," Admiral Kang said quietly. "They're attacking human civilians." The room fell silent. Everyone knew what that meant. First contact with an alien species was supposed to be humanity's greatest moment. Instead, it had become their worst nightmare. Senator Williams, the chairman of the Defense Committee, cleared his throat. "Admiral, with respect, New Gansu is one small colony in a distant system. We cannot risk Earth's entire fleet for 15,000 people." The words hung in the air like a physical weight. Everyone in the room understood the logic. Earth's fleet was humanity's only protection. If they sent every ship to rescue one colony and were defeated, Earth itself would be defenseless. Admiral Kang stood slowly and walked to the large window that looked out over Earth's orbital shipyards. Hundreds of ships hung in space like silver needles, the product of decades of human engineering and determination. They represented the finest military force humanity had ever created. "Senator Williams," he said, without turning around, "how many people live on Earth?" 12 billion, Admiral. "And how many humans live on colonies throughout the galaxy?" "Approximately 800 million. Admiral Kang turned back to face the room. 800 million people who left Earth to build new lives among the stars. They carry our flag, our values, our hope for the future. They are not separate from us, they are us." He walked back to his chair but remained standing. "Senator, if we abandon New Gansu because it's too far away or too small to matter, what message does that send to every other human colony? What happens when the aliens attack Proxima Centauri or New Shanghai, or any of the other worlds where our people have made their homes. We would defend them if we could, Senator Williams replied, but his voice lacked conviction. No, Admiral Kang said firmly. We defend them because we must, because that is what it means to be human. We do not abandon our own. The room erupted in arguments. Politicians spoke of impossible logistics and acceptable losses. Generals warned about depleting Earth's defenses for a mission that might already be too late. Scientists explained the technical challenges of sending a fleet so far from home. Admiral, Kang listened to it all with growing anger. These people were talking about 15,000 human lives as if they were numbers on a spreadsheet. They were forgetting that each of those numbers had a name, a family, dreams and fears, just like everyone else. Enough, he said, and his voice cut through the arguments like a blade. The decision has been made. We are going to New Gansu. Admiral, Senator Williams protested, you don't have the authority to. I have the authority to defend human lives, Admiral Kang interrupted. And that is exactly what I intend to do. He activated the communication system and spoke directly to the fleet commanders waiting in orbit. This is Admiral Kang. I want every available ship prepared for immediate deployment. Combat status Alpha. Full armament. We leave for New Gansu in 6 hours. The politicians and generals stared at him in shock. Dr. Kim was the first to speak. Admiral, our ships have never attempted a jump that far. The quantum displacement drives are still experimental. We could lose half the fleet just trying to get there. Then we'll make the trip with whatever ships survive, Admiral Kang replied. Captain Yoon, are you receiving this transmission? Yes, sir, came the voice of Captain Minho Yoon, commander of the flagship Seoul's Thunder. Fleet is standing. By for your orders. Prepare for maximum range deployment. Destination is New Gansu Colony, Ross Sector. I want every ship equipped with the new quantum drives and full armament packages. Understood, sir. What about crew rotations? Admiral Kang looked around the room at the worried faces of Earth's leaders. All volunteers only. I won't order anyone to risk their life for this mission, but I suspect we'll have more volunteers than we can use. He was right. Within hours, the request for volunteers had spread throughout Earth's fleet. Experienced officers requested transfers from safe assignments to join the expedition. Young pilots fresh from the academy begged for the chance to serve. Engineers and medical personnel lined up to sign deployment papers. The response was overwhelming. Earth's military personnel understood what many politicians did not. If humanity was going to survive in a galaxy filled with hostile aliens, they could never abandon their own people. Every human life mattered, whether it was on Earth or on the most distant colony. Captain So Young-han, commander of the experimental dreadnought Incheon's Wrath, sent a personal message to Admiral Kang. Sir, my ship and crew are ready. We have the new gravitational torpedo systems installed and tested. Whatever we're facing out there, we'll be ready for them. Chief Engineer Wan Ho-bei worked frantically to install the latest quantum displacement drives on as many ships as possible. The technology was barely out of the experimental stage, but it was humanity's only hope of reaching New Gansu in time to matter. Dr. Nari Jung, Earth's leading expert on alien languages and communication, requested a place on the expedition. If we're making first contact with an alien species, she explained, someone needs to be there who can understand what they're saying. As the fleet prepared for departure, Admiral Kang stood in his ready room aboard Seoul's Thunder, looking at the tactical displays. 200 ships would make the journey to New Gansu. It was the largest fleet humanity had ever assembled, carrying the hopes and prayers of 12 billion people. The quantum displacement drives were untested at this range. The ships might not survive the journey. Even if they did, they would be facing an unknown enemy with unknown capabilities, but they were going anyway, because that was what humans did. They protected their own, no matter the cost, no matter the odds. Admiral Kang activated the ship-wide communication system. This is Admiral Kang speaking to all ships of the New Gansu expedition. In a few hours, we will attempt the longest military jump in human history. We go to defend 15,000 of our people from an alien threat we do not understand. Some of you may not return from this mission. I will not lie to you about the dangers we face, but I will promise you this. We will not abandon our people. We will reach New Gansu, and we will bring our citizens home. The response from 200 ships was immediate and unanimous. Every crew member, from admiral to maintenance worker, understood the importance of this moment. Humanity was taking its first step onto the galactic stage, and they would do it with courage, determination, and the unshakable belief that no human would be left behind. The countdown began. In 6 hours, Earth's mightiest fleet would disappear into the void. 3 days had passed since Admiral Mira's ultimatum, and New Gansu colony was dying. The bombardment had been methodical and cruel. The aliens did not simply destroy everything at once. Instead, they picked apart the colony piece by piece, letting the humans watch as their world crumbled around them. First, they destroyed the mining platforms and communication arrays. Then they targeted the power stations and water recycling plants. Finally, they began working on the habitat domes themselves. Jinwoo Park sat in the emergency command center, deep in the colony's core, watching the damage reports scroll across his screen. Each line represented years of human work destroyed in seconds. Worse, each line represented hope slipping away. "Sir," reported Yoonji Choi from her engineering station, "we've lost another power coupling in Sector 7. I can reroute through the backup systems, but we're running out of options." The young engineer looked exhausted. She had not slept in 3 days, working constantly to keep the colony's life support systems running as the aliens systematically destroyed the infrastructure. Her face was smudged with grease and sweat, but her hands remained steady on the controls. "How long can we hold?" Jinwoo asked. "Maybe 12 hours, Yoonji replied. "If they keep hitting us at this rate, the main reactor will shut down automatically to prevent a meltdown. After that..." She did not need to finish the sentence. Without power, the life support systems would fail. 15,000 people would suffocate in the darkness of space. Security Chief Do-hyun Kim entered the command center, his security uniform torn and bloodied. He had been leading teams to rescue trapped civilians from the damaged sections of the colony. Each mission was more dangerous than the last as the alien bombardment continued. "How many did we get out?" Jinwoo asked. 43 from the residential sector, Do-hyun reported. "But we lost the entire science complex. The aliens hit it with some kind of energy weapon that melted the hull plating. Everyone inside." He shook his head, unable to finish. Jinwoo closed his eyes for a moment. Those were not just numbers. They were people he had known for years. Dr. Martinez, who had discovered new mineral deposits that helped the colony prosper. Teacher Kim, who had taught hundreds of children. Engineer Park, who had just gotten married last month. "Sir," Yuna Lee called from her communication station. "I'm getting movement on the surface sensors. Something's happening up there." On the main screen, they watched as dark shapes descended from the alien ships toward the colony's outer hull. The shapes moved with purpose, landing at strategic points around the habitat domes. As they got closer, the cameras revealed creatures that made everyone in the command center step backward in horror. The hunters stood 3 meters tall on 6 legs that ended in razor-sharp claws. Their bodies were covered in thick armor that seemed to be grown rather than manufactured. Multiple eyes glowed red in the darkness, and their mouths were filled with teeth designed for tearing flesh. "They're boarding us," Do-hyun said quietly. "Ground assault." The security chief began issuing orders to his teams throughout the colony. 24 security officers with basic weapons against an unknown number of alien warriors designed for killing. The odds were not good. "All civilians to the deepest shelters," Jinwoo announced over the colony-wide communication system. "Security teams to defensive positions. This is not a drill." Throughout New Gansu, families huddled in the reinforced chambers that had been designed to protect against asteroid impacts. They had never been meant to withstand an alien invasion. Parents held their children close and whispered that everything would be all right, even though they did not believe it themselves. The first breach came in the agricultural section. The hunters used weapons that fired superheated plasma to cut through the hull like butter. Alarms screamed as atmosphere rushed out into space, but emergency force fields activated to contain the damage. Do-hyun's security teams took positions at the choke points leading to the civilian shelters. They had pistols and riot gear against creatures that could tear through steel with their bare claws. But they were human, and humans did not surrender easily. The first hunter to enter the agricultural section died quickly, surprised by the humans' immediate resistance. The security team used the narrow corridors to their advantage, forcing the aliens to attack one at a time instead of in groups. But for every hunter they killed, 2 more took its place. "They're pushing through Sector 4, Do-hyun reported, over his communicator. "I need more men." "I don't have any more to give you," Jinwoo replied. "Hold as long as you can." In the medical center, Dr. Jun Hee-song worked frantically to treat the wounded. The small facility had never been designed for combat casualties, but she made do with what she had. Nurses and volunteers helped move patients to safer areas as the sound of fighting grew closer. "Doctor," called Nurse Patel, "we have more wounded coming in from Sector 6, burns and plasma wounds." Dr. Song looked at her supplies and tried not to despair. They were running out of everything: medicine, bandages, even basic painkillers. But she kept working because that was what doctors did. They saved lives, even when the situation seemed hopeless. The hunters continued their advance through the colony, but they met resistance at every turn. Maintenance workers used their knowledge of the service tunnels to stage ambush attacks. Teachers and shopkeepers took up improvised weapons to defend their families. Even the children helped, carrying messages between the defenders and watching for alien movements. But slowly, inevitably, the defenses crumbled. "Sir," Yoonji reported from her engineering station, "they've reached the main power coupling. If they damage that, we lose everything." Do-hyun's voice crackled over the communicator, strained with exhaustion and pain. "I can't stop them. There are too many of them, and they keep coming." Jinwoo looked around the command center at the faces of his people. They were tired, scared, and running out of hope. But they were still fighting. They were still human. He made a decision that he hoped he would never have to make. "Yoonji," he said quietly, "activate the self-destruct sequence." The young engineer's hands froze over her controls. "Sir, if we can't save the colony, we can at least deny it to them," Jinwoo explained. "We won't let them enslave our people or steal our technology." Yoonji's fingers trembled as she entered the authorization codes. The self-destruct system had been installed as a last resort against pirates or raiders. No one had ever imagined it would be used against an alien invasion. "Sequence activated," she reported. "We have 15 minutes. Jinwoo activated the colony-wide communication system one last time. "Attention all personnel. This is Administrator Park. I have activated the colony self-destruct system. We have 15 minutes to say goodbye to our families and make peace with our choices." Throughout New Gansu, the fighting gradually stopped as the announcement sank in. Security teams held their positions, but they stopped firing. The hunters seemed confused by the sudden lack of resistance, but they continued their advance toward the civilian shelters. In the command center, Hyuna Lee sat at her communication station, tears streaming down her face. She had not heard from her parents on Earth in over a year. She would never see them again. "Hyuna," Jinwoo said gently, "send one more message to Earth. Tell them what happened here. Tell them we did not surrender." With shaking hands, Hyuna began encoding the final transmission from New Gansu Colony. It was a message that would probably never be received, sent to a world that might never know what happened to them. "This is New Gansu Colony," she began. "If anyone receives this message, know that we fought. We did not give up. We did not surrender. The aliens came with ships that could destroy worlds, and we stood against them with tools and courage. We lost, but we proved that humans do not bow to tyrants, no matter how powerful they are." She paused, looking around at the people who had become her family over the years of service on this distant outpost. "Tell Earth," she continued. "Tell our families that we died free. Tell them that somewhere in the galaxy there are aliens who learned that humans are not easy prey. Maybe that knowledge will help save others. The countdown continued, marking the seconds until New Gansu colony would vanish in a nuclear fire. The hunters had breached the final defensive line and were approaching the civilian shelters. In minutes, they would reach the families hiding. In the deepest parts of the colony, Jinwoo Park stood at his station, his hand hovering over the final detonation switch. Around him, his people waited with quiet dignity for the end. They had done everything they could. They had held out for 3 days against impossible odds. They had sent their message to Earth even though help would never come in time. They had been human until the very end. The countdown reached 60 seconds, then 30, then 10. Jinwoo began to press the switch, and then space itself began to tear apart above New Gansu colony. Reality twisted and bent like heated metal as the quantum displacement drives of Earth's fleet tore through the fabric of space-time itself. What had been empty void around New Gansu colony suddenly blazed with impossible light as 200 human warships materialized from folded dimensions. The flagship Soul's Thunder led the formation, its hull gleaming white and blue with Earth's colors. Behind it came wave after wave of humanity's finest vessels. Destroyers, cruisers, battleships, and the massive experimental dreadnought Inchan's Wrath. They emerged in perfect formation, as if they had been waiting just beyond sight for this exact moment. Admiral Mira, watching from the bridge of her flagship, felt something she had not experienced in decades of conquest. Shock. In all her years of service to the hegemony, she had never seen anything like the arrival of Earth's fleet. The quantum displacement technology was beyond anything her species had developed. These primitive humans had just crossed 47 light years in a matter of days. "Admiral," her tactical officer reported, "we're detecting 200 vessels. Unknown configuration, but they're armed and moving to combat positions." Admiral Mira stared at the display screen, trying to understand what she was seeing. The human ships were smaller than hegemony vessels, but there was something about their design that made her nervous. They moved with precision and purpose, like predators that had found their prey. "Open communication channels," she ordered. "I want to speak with whoever commands this fleet." The response came immediately, broadcast on all frequencies in perfect hegemony standard. The voice was calm, controlled, and absolutely terrifying in its certainty. "This is Fleet Admiral Taehyun Kang of the Terran Defense Force. You have 30 seconds to cease all hostile actions against our citizens and withdraw from this system. This is your only warning." Admiral Mira felt her confidence return. These humans might have impressive technology, but they were still outnumbered. Her third fleet had 89 vessels, each one larger and more heavily armed than anything in the human formation. "Human Admiral," she replied, "you are far from your home waters. This system belongs to the hegemony now. Your people will serve us, or they will die. You have no power here." The human response was swift and devastating. "You are mistaken." The battle began without further warning. Captain Min Ho-yoon, commanding Soul's Thunder, fired the first shot. The plasma lance batteries that had been installed just days before Earth's departure unleashed focused beams of superheated matter that cut through the nearest hegemony vessel like a sword through paper. The alien ship, which had seemed invincible just moments before, simply came apart. Its crystalline hull shattered into a million pieces as internal explosions tore through its structure. In less than 10 seconds, a ship that could have destroyed planets was reduced to glowing debris. "All ships, engage at will," Admiral Kang ordered. "Show them what happens when they threaten human civilians." The battle that followed would be remembered in human history as the moment their species announced its presence to the galaxy. Earth's fleet moved with coordination and efficiency that stunned the hegemony forces. Every ship knew its role. Every captain understood the mission. Captain So Young-han, commanding the experimental dreadnought Inchan's Wrath, demonstrated the newest weapons in humanity's arsenal. Her gravitational torpedo systems fired projectiles that warped space-time around their targets. Hegemony ships found themselves crushed by their own gravity, as the torpedoes created miniature black holes that lasted just long enough to tear the alien vessels apart. "Target destroyed," she reported with professional calm, moving to engage the next vessel. The hegemony had never faced an enemy like this. Their tactics were based on overwhelming firepower and the terror their massive ships inspired in their enemies. But the humans seemed completely unafraid. They fought with cold precision, treating the battle like a complex mathematical problem to be solved. Fighter squadrons led by Commander Seo-hyun Park swarmed around the larger hegemony vessels, like angry insects. The human fighters were tiny compared to the alien ships, but they moved in perfect coordination, striking at weak points and disappearing before the enemy could respond. "This is Blue Squadron," Commander Park reported over the communications network. "We've knocked out the weapons arrays on Target 7. She's defenseless." "Confirmed, Blue Squadron," Admiral Kang replied. "Red Squadron, move in and finish her." The hegemony had expected the humans to be afraid, to hesitate when faced with the might of an empire that had conquered dozens of star systems. Instead, they fought with the fury of a species that would not tolerate threats to their own people. Admiral Mira watched in growing horror as her fleet was systematically destroyed. The humans had adapted to hegemony tactics within minutes of the battle beginning. When her ships fired their energy weapons, the human vessels simply absorbed the energy and redirected it back at their attackers. When her vessels tried to ram the smaller human ships, they found themselves outmaneuvered by pilots who seemed to know exactly where they would be. "How many ships have we lost?" she demanded. 43 confirmed destroyed," her tactical officer reported. 18 more are heavily damaged and withdrawing. In less than an hour, the humans had reduced the third hegemony fleet to less than half its original strength. Admiral Mira had commanded fleets that conquered entire star systems. She had never been defeated in battle, but she was being defeated now by a species that was supposed to be primitive and helpless. While the space battle raged above, the liberation of New Gansu colony had begun on the surface. Marine Colonel Yunwoo Jang led the assault, his drop pods smashing through the colony's compromised hull like meteors. His Marines were equipped with powered armor that made them faster and stronger than any human had ever been. The hunters that had been terrorizing the colonists suddenly found themselves facing an enemy that could match their speed and strength. The human Marines moved through the colony's corridors like avenging angels, their weapons designed specifically for close-quarters combat against heavily armored opponents. "This is Colonel Jang," he reported over the communication network. "We have secured the main habitat areas. Civilian casualties appear to be minimal. The colonists are alive." In the colony's command center, Jinwoo Park stared at his displays in disbelief. Minutes ago, he had been preparing to destroy his home rather than let it fall to alien invaders. Now, human soldiers were fighting through the corridors above, driving back the creatures that had seemed unstoppable. "Sir," Hunali called from her communication station, "I'm receiving a transmission from the human fleet. They're asking for a status report." With shaking hands, Jinwoo activated the communication system. "This is Administrator Jinwoo Park of New Gansu Colony. We are still alive, thank you. Thank you for coming." The response came from Admiral Kang himself, his voice warm with relief. "Administrator Park, this is Admiral Kang. We received your message. We're here to take you home." Throughout the colony, the news spread like wildfire. Earth had come for them. Across impossible distances, through dangers that could have destroyed the entire fleet, humanity had answered their call for help. Families who had been preparing to die embraced each other with tears of joy. Children who had been hiding in darkness laughed as they heard the sound of human voices in the corridors above. Dr. Jun-hee Song looked up from treating wounded colonists as human medical teams arrived to help. The Earth doctors brought supplies and equipment that would save lives she had thought were lost. They worked together without words, united by the simple desire to heal and protect human life. Security Chief Do-Yun Kim, wounded but still fighting, watched as Earth's Marines finished clearing the last of the hunters from the colony's lower levels. These professional soldiers treated him with respect, recognizing him as a fellow defender of human lives. "Good work holding them off," Colonel Jang told him. You bought us the time we needed to get here. The space battle was ending as decisively as it had begun. Admiral Mira's once mighty Third Fleet was now a collection of burning wrecks drifting around New Gansu colony. Only her flagship remained functional, and even that was heavily damaged and venting atmosphere. "Admiral," her communications officer reported, "the humans are demanding our surrender." Admiral Mira looked at the tactical display one last time. 89 ships reduced to 1, thousands of hegemony warriors dead or captured. The humans had not just defeated her fleet. They had destroyed it so completely that it would serve as a warning to the entire galaxy. "Send our surrender," she ordered quietly, "and prepare a message for the High Command. Tell them that we have encountered a new species. Tell them that the humans are not prey." As the hegemony flagship powered down its weapons in surrender, Admiral Kang stood on the bridge of Seoul's Thunder and looked out at New Gansu colony. The small mining outpost that had seemed so vulnerable just hours before was now protected by the most powerful fleet humanity had ever assembled. "All ships, this is Admiral Kang," he announced. "The colony is secure. Our people are safe. Well done, everyone." Earth remembers her children no matter how far they travel. The response from 200 ships was immediate and overwhelming. Cheers echoed across communication channels as crews celebrated not just their victory. 2 weeks after the Battle of New Gansu, the interrogation chamber aboard Seoul's Thunder was filled with tense silence. Admiral Mira sat across from Dr. Nari Jung, her silver skin dulled and her black eyes reflecting defeat. Around the table sat the senior officers of Earth's fleet, including Admiral Kang himself. "Tell us about the hegemony," Dr. Jung said in perfect hegemony standard. Her linguistic computers had been working around the clock to decode the alien language, and she now spoke it better than many of the prisoners. Admiral Mira studied the human woman with something approaching respect. These creatures had surprised her in every possible way. Their technology was more advanced than it appeared. Their tactics were more sophisticated than expected, and their determination to protect their own people was unlike anything the hegemony had encountered. "The hegemony spans 4,000 star systems," Admiral Mira said finally. "We have conquered 17 different species over the past millennium. None of them offered significant resistance." "How many ships?" Admiral Kang asked. "Active fleet strength is approximately 12,000 vessels," Admiral Mira replied. "But the hegemony can build more quickly than any species we have encountered. Our industrial capacity is beyond your comprehension." The humans exchanged glances around the table. 12,000 ships against Earth's total fleet of maybe 800 vessels. The mathematics were sobering, but Admiral Kang's expression did not change. "What is your government structure?" Dr. Jung continued. "The High Command consists of 7 Supreme Admirals, each controlling a sector of hegemony space. They answer only to the Emperor, who has ruled for 3 centuries. The Emperor's word is absolute law." Captain Min Ho-yoon leaned forward. "What will they do when they learn about what happened here?" Admiral Mira was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice carried a weight that made everyone in the room pay attention. "They will come for you," she said simply. "The hegemony has never suffered a defeat like this. They will mobilize everything they have to destroy your species before you can become a threat." "When?" Admiral Kang asked. 6 months, perhaps a year. The High Command will want to study the recordings from this battle first. They will try to understand how you defeated us so completely. Then they will come with overwhelming force." The meeting continued for hours as Dr. Jung extracted every piece of information she could about hegemony technology, tactics, and strategic thinking. The picture that emerged was terrifying in its scope. Humanity had just announced its presence to a galactic empire that viewed all other species as either slaves or food. But the interrogation also revealed something else. The hegemony had grown complacent over the centuries. They were used to easy victories against primitive species. They had never faced an enemy that could match their technology and exceed their tactical flexibility. "There is something else you should know," Admiral Mira said as the session was ending. "The hegemony believes that intelligence and technology are linked to physical size. Larger species are assumed to be more advanced. Smaller species are dismissed as primitive. And humans are smaller than most species you've encountered, Dr. Young observed. Much smaller. The hegemony will have difficulty believing that creatures your size could build ships capable of quantum displacement. They will underestimate you, at least initially. After the interrogation, Admiral Kang called a meeting of his senior staff. The flag briefing room was filled with the officers who had led Earth's first interstellar war, and their faces showed the weight of what they had learned. Recommendations? Admiral Kang asked without preamble. Captain So-Young-han spoke first. We need to return to Earth immediately and begin fleet expansion. If the hegemony is coming with 12,000 ships, we'll need every vessel we can build. Agreed, said Chief Engineer Won-Ho Bae. But we also need to improve our technology. The quantum displacement drives gave us the advantage of surprise, but they won't work twice. We need better weapons, better defenses, and better ships. Dr. Young looked up from her notes. I recommend we interrogate every hegemony prisoner we captured. The more we know about their technology and tactics, the better we can prepare. Admiral, Kang nodded. What about the colonies? Do we evacuate them or fortify them? The question hung in the air like a physical weight. There were over 300 human colonies scattered across the galaxy, most of them as vulnerable as New Gansu had been. Moving 800 million people would be impossible, but defending them all would stretch Earth's fleet beyond its limits. We fortify, Captain Yoon said firmly. If we start evacuating colonies, we'll be admitting that humans can't defend their homes. That's not a message we want to send. Besides, added Colonel Jang, the colonies are what we're fighting for. If we abandon them, we've already lost. Admiral Kang made his decision. We return to Earth with half the fleet. The other half stays here to fortify New Gansu and establish a forward base. I want this system turned into a fortress that can hold off anything the hegemony sends. The work began immediately. Engineering teams from Earth's fleet worked alongside New Gansu's colonists to repair the damage from the siege and install new defensive systems. The small mining colony was transformed into humanity's first military base in deep space. Won-Ho Bae oversaw the construction of orbital defense platforms equipped with the same gravitational torpedo systems that had devastated the hegemony fleet. Fighter squadrons established patrol routes throughout the system. Most importantly, quantum communication arrays were installed to provide instant contact with Earth. Meanwhile, the colonists themselves had changed. The siege had transformed farmers and miners into seasoned defenders. Do-Yun Kim was promoted to colonel and given command of the system's ground forces. Yoon-ji Choi became the chief engineer for the entire defensive network. Hyuna Lee, whose message had started everything, was placed in charge of the communication center that would coordinate humanity's defense. Jin-Woo Park stood in his rebuilt office, looking out at the transformed colony. Where once there had been simple mining platforms, there were now military installations capable of detecting enemy ships at the edge of the system. Where once there had been civilian transports, there were now patrol ships crewed by volunteers from the colony. It's hard to believe it's the same place, he said to Admiral Kang, who was preparing to return to Earth with half the fleet. It's not the same place, Admiral Kang replied. And we're not the same species we were 2 weeks ago. The galaxy knows about humanity now. We can never go back to being an isolated species exploring empty space. The Admiral was right. News of the Battle of New Gansu had spread to every human colony through the quantum communication network. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Volunteer pilots arrived from dozens of worlds to join the fleet. Engineers and scientists worked around the clock to develop new technologies. Industrial worlds converted their factories to military production. But perhaps the most important change was in humanity's understanding of itself. For centuries, humans had wondered if they were alone in the galaxy. Now they knew they were not alone. And they knew that the galaxy was a dangerous place filled with species that would enslave or destroy them without hesitation. The response to that knowledge was pure human stubbornness. They would not surrender. They would not hide. They would not abandon their colonies or their principles. They would fight, and they would win, because that was what humans did when faced with impossible odds. On Earth, the greatest military expansion in human history began. Shipyards that had built cargo vessels were converted to produce warships. Universities that had studied theoretical physics were tasked with developing practical weapons. Children who had dreamed of exploring the stars, now trained to defend them, Dr. Young established the Xenological Institute to study alien technology and culture. Her first recommendation was simple. Humans needed to learn everything they could about their enemies because knowledge would be as important as weapons in the war to come. 6 months after the Battle of New Gansu, Earth's fleet had grown from 800 ships to over 3,000. New designs based on captured hegemony technology were entering production. Most importantly, humanity had established a network of fortified bases throughout human space, each one capable of holding off a significant enemy force. The final message of the story came from New Gansu itself. Hyuna Lee, now wearing the uniform of Earth's Deep Space Communication Service, sat at her station in the rebuilt communication center. Before her was a transmission that would be sent toward the galactic core, where the hegemony's homeworlds lay hidden among ancient stars. The message was simple, but it carried the weight of humanity's response to the galaxy's cruelty. It was not a plea for mercy or a promise of submission. It was something far more dangerous, a declaration of war from a species that had just discovered it was not alone and had decided that it would not go quietly into the darkness. This is New Gansu. Colony. Hyuna spoke into the transmitter, her voice clear and strong. This is humanity. We received your message. We understand your intentions. We know you are coming. She paused, looking out at the stars where Earth's ships patrolled in endless vigilance. We are ready for you. We are not the helpless prey you expected. We are not the primitive species you thought you could enslave. The red star burned weakly in the black void of space, casting pale light on the metal structures that hung around it like silver jewels. New Gansu Colony had been home to 15,000 people for almost 60 years. The miners worked in shifts, around the clock, pulling rare metals from the asteroids that drifted through this lonely system. These metals powered the great ships that carried humans to distant worlds. Jinwoo Park stood at the window of his office watching the mining ships return with their daily cargo. At 55 years old, he had spent most of his life on this colony. His father had helped build the first dome, and his daughter now worked in the engineering section. New Gansu was not just a place to him. It was home. The morning had started like any other. Workers reported to their shifts, children attended school in the education dome, and the great processors hummed as they turned raw ore into pure metal. The colony's routine had not changed in decades. People lived quiet lives, far from the politics and wars that sometimes troubled the inner worlds. That peace ended at exactly 1400 hours. The first sign of trouble came from the sensor station. Young Hyuna Lee, who monitored space traffic from her position in the communication center, noticed something strange on her screens. Dark shapes were moving at the edge of the system, too large to be asteroids and moving too fast to be natural objects. Administrator Park, she called over the intercom. I'm seeing unknown contacts approaching the system. They're big, sir. Really big. Jinwoo hurried to the communication center, his boots echoing in the metal corridors. When he saw the sensor readings, his blood turned cold. 12 massive objects were moving toward New Gansu at incredible speed. Each one was larger than the colony's main habitat dome. Are they ships? He asked. Hyuna's fingers danced over her controls, trying to get a clearer picture. I think so, sir, but I've never seen anything like them. They're not human designs. The words hit Jinwoo like a physical blow. In 60 years of operation, New Gansu had never encountered alien life. Most people believed humans were alone in the galaxy. The discovery of other intelligent species should have been cause for celebration. But something about these approaching ships felt wrong. Minutes passed in tense silence as the unknown vessels drew closer. Then, without warning, space around the colony lit up with brilliant flashes of light. The mining platforms on the outer edge of the system simply vanished, vaporized by weapons that fired beams of pure energy. Get me Security Chief Kim, Jinwoo ordered. Now. Do-Yun Kim arrived within minutes, still wearing his maintenance coveralls. At 42, he was a former military man who had come to New Gansu seeking a quiet life. That quiet life had just ended forever. "What's the situation?" he asked, studying the sensor displays. "Unknown alien vessels," Jinwoo replied. "They just destroyed 3 mining platforms." Do Yun's face hardened. He had seen combat before, during the colonial wars 20 years ago. He recognized the signs of an attack. "Do we have any defenses?" "Some security drones and emergency shelters," Jinwoo said. "Nothing that could stop something like this." The alien ships continued their approach, their crystalline hulls gleaming in the starlight. They moved with purpose, arranging themselves in a perfect formation around the colony. As they drew closer, their true size became clear. Each vessel was over 2 kilometers long, bristling with weapon arrays that could level cities. Then came the message. The main screen in the communications center flickered to life, showing a creature that made everyone in the room step backward, in shock. It was tall and thin, with silver skin that seemed to flow like liquid metal. Its eyes were pure black, without iris or pupil, and when it spoke, its voice was like grinding metal. "Primitive humans of this small colony," the creature said. "I am Admiral Mira of the 3rd Hegemony Fleet. Your species is unknown to us, but that will soon change. You will surrender your resources and your people to serve the hegemony. Those who resist will be destroyed. You have 1 solar rotation to comply." The transmission ended, leaving the communication center in stunned silence. "Sir," Yuna whispered, "what do we do?" Jinwoo looked around at the faces of his people. They were miners and engineers, teachers and shopkeepers. They were not soldiers, but they were human, and humans did not surrender easily. "Contact Earth," he ordered. "Tell them what's happening here." Yuna's fingers flew over her controls. "Sir, it will take 47 years for a message to reach Earth, even at light speed, and there's no guarantee anyone will receive it." "Send it anyway," Jinwoo said firmly. "Use the emergency beacon, maximum power." As Hyuna worked to prepare the transmission, alarms began blaring throughout the colony. The alien ships had begun, firing on the outer defensive satellites, clearing the way for their assault. Brilliant flashes of energy lit up the darkness as human technology was swept aside like paper in a hurricane. "All personnel to emergency stations," Do-hyun announced over the colony-wide communication system. "This is not a drill. Proceed to designated shelters immediately." Throughout New Gansu, 15,000 people dropped what they were doing and ran for their lives. Families grabbed emergency packs and hurried to reinforced sections deep within the colony's structure. Children cried as their parents carried them through corridors filled with the sound of running feet and frightened voices. In the engineering section, Yoonji Choi worked frantically to reroute power to the emergency systems. The young engineer had never dealt with a crisis like this, but her training took over. If the colony was going to survive even a few hours, they would need every advantage they could get. "Power rerouted to emergency shelters," she reported. "Life support is stable, but I don't know how long it will last under attack." The first bombardment struck New Gansu just as Hyuna finished encoding the emergency message to Earth. The colony shook like a toy in the hands of an angry child. Lights flickered and people screamed as the sound of tearing metal echoed through the corridors. "Message ready, sir," Hyuna reported, her voice steady despite the terror in her eyes. "Send it," Jinwoo ordered. The transmission burst out into space, at the speed of light, carrying humanity's first cry for help to their distant homeworld. It was a simple message, but it carried the weight of 15,000 lives. "This is New Gansu Colony. We are under attack by unknown alien forces. Requesting immediate assistance. We cannot hold much longer." As the message raced toward Earth, the bombardment continued. The aliens were methodical, destroying the colony's external defenses piece by piece. They were not trying to kill everyone at once. They wanted to break human resistance slowly, to make the survivors understand how hopeless their situation was. But they did not understand humans very well. In the deepest shelters of New Gansu, families huddled together while their world burned above them. Children held their parents' hands and asked when the bad aliens would go away. Adults whispered prayers and wondered if anyone would ever know what happened to them. And in the communication center, Hyuna Lee kept her hands on her controls. ready to send another message if the chance came. She did not know if Earth would ever receive her transmission. She did not know if help would ever come. But she knew one thing for certain. Humans did not give up without a fight.